Welcome to Momentum Mode. My name's Corey Farringle, and you'll hear me alongside my co-host Mike Shannon shortly. This episode will feature an interview with Amanda Lannert, a seasoned executive and is the longtime CEO of Jellyvision, a company recognized as a great place to work for many years. We're going to cover a wide range of topics, including growing the company, teams, team culture, managing boards of directors, as well as evolution of leadership in a fast-growing organization. But before we jump in, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Kilpatrick, Townsend & Stockton, an innovative, focused law firm with 22 offices around the world, including our hometown of Chicago. Also thank to Mike's company Improve and Corey's company Aperion Ventures for their support of the pod. On with the episode. And we're joined today by Amanda Lannert, who Mike and I have both known for a long time. And for those that don't know Amanda, she's CEO of Jellyvision for 13, 14 years, something like that.
So adorable. It is something like that, but I've been there since 1938. So.
That's what I thought. You know, you look it. I mean, it just, there we go. But no, you've been with Jellyvision a while. I've been CEO for a very long time, but you're really well known in Chicago as an investor, advisor, board member. You serve currently on quite a few boards. About how many?
6 boards of directors, and then I'm a formal advisor for 3 additional ones.
Okay.
That's how I stay fresh. That's how I learn.
Well, and I totally agree with that. I mean, a number of times I walked out of a board meeting like, I should be doing that at my company. But anyway, and so you're involved in more than just one company. You see a whole lot out there. Also 2-time CEO of the Year in Chicago, best place to millennial to work as well. So you get all the accolades. So highly decorated here.
Our nerds have parents in the Midwest who vote. I'm just saying, I just want to be clear, Facebook army of aunts and uncles of Jellyvision employees come out in full force.
So you run a great campaign is what you're saying. You know how to mobilize the vote.
The kids have people who
Don't
vote.
Let her be humble. Don't let her be humble.
The kids got the people. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And I feel like every event I go to in Chicago, our speakers, the featured speaker, Amanda Lannert's featured speaker here. So you obviously very frequently speaking around the city. So we want to talk to you today about your role as CEO and really your unique perspective. And let's start out with, so when you became CEO, you'd been with the company a while. What was the biggest surprise to you?
Sadly, becoming CEO.
Oh, not the answer I expected.
I'm going to tell the story really quickly. On my birthday, many, many moons ago, the founder said, hey, let's go to lunch. And there used to be a lot of pomp and circumstance making fun of me on my birthday that I thought it was a weird request to go mano a mano. And he says, hey, let's go to the Art Institute, which is like a $20 cab ride away. It is not conveniently located. So we're going. Okay. And then he says, it's a really nice September day. Before we go inside to have lunch, let's sit down on this bench. And I'm just like, okay. Final thing he says, it's weird. He goes, I have a gift for you. And I'm like, you're not really a gifty person. I'm a gifty person, but you're not really a reciprocant. Okay, it's going to be a gift. And he reaches into a messenger bag and pulls out a gift bag and hands it to me. And it's heavy. And I say, oh no, Harry has wrapped a brick. And it's going to be a metaphor for it's like a metaphor for what we're building together. I didn't think it was a joke. I thought it was like a symbol, like we're building something to last. We're building something to last. Wow. And then he says, open it. And I'm like, oh no, this brick is going to have a plaque on it that I have to keep on my desk until the end of days. I'm like, okay. And I go to open it. It's not a brick. It's a box of business cards that said Amanda Lannert, CEO. And so I look at it and I was like, no. He's like, yeah. I'm like, no. He's like, yeah. I'm like, no. He said, yeah. And so it actually bothers me that I had never even considered being CEO, let alone had aspirations or asked for it or planned for it. So the first thing that surprised me about being CEO was that I was a CEO. I was kid of academics.
That's crazy.
It was not my path. It was done in a surprise. And he's like, and everyone already knows. So it's like, I came back to an office where people had more time with it than I did. They said, congratulations. And I'm like, I'm sorry.
Can I call my husband?
I don't know. Because Harry left behind as CEO some really big shoes to fill. Okay. He was the founder CEO, right. And he was still there, and we had a peaceful transition of power. And it's just like always better lucky than good in the ways I've been lucky are working with insane people. And he's kind of like, you're doing the work. You might as well have the title. Like, who does that?
Yeah.
And you mentioned he was still there. What was the founder's role then when you were CEO?
He's an inventor.
Yeah.
He's like one of the most prolific 0 to 1 guys. Jackbox Games. He's now working on a company that's literally trying to save democracy. He's a 0 to 1 guy. And our 1 finally went to 2, to 3, to 4. And I started liking it. I'm putting systems in place. And I'm like, scale's awesome. And he's like, I don't like not knowing everyone and their business. Yeah. And I don't like the same thing. I like new. So I'm going to put you on this like scale thing, and then we're going to have people new. So it was a very different stage of the business. And I did like scale. I do like scale. I do like more people. I do like more customers and, solvency and security and things like that. So that he stayed and was creative, and I became CEO. And then he left the business about 5 or 6 years ago and basically was like, okay.
And he nicely stepped back.
He did.
That's amazing. I got fortunate. My first CEO role was walk into the room. CEO walks into my office, founder, and says, "I'm done."
So talk about it. Founders, though.
Yes.
CEO day one, or in it day one. Architect, owner mindset day one. How do you think it's different if you imagine like you replace yourself? How is the mentality different?
He might have done both. Day one and replaced himself.
How is it different being founder from CEO, or how is it different from
like surprise about CEO being an operating CEO versus a founding CEO?
I think my transition was similar to like any team manager, kind of going from individual contributor to manager, because we started as a group of founders, right? So we were 4 co-founders. Yeah. We were young. We didn't have a CEO title. It was all co-founder. Mm-hmm. And so then to eventually define a CEO, which we got introduced to a VC in San Francisco, and the VC asked me a question, "Who's the CEO?" I said, "Oh, we haven't defined a CEO." I said, "I'm not taking the meeting." That was actually the impetus for us to sit down and decide roles.
Did you like pull names out of a hat? Did you rock, paper, scissors?
Okay, just looked at what
I
each
knew
of us
them
were
at
doing.
that point. It was clear who was CEO. Okay, they just didn't admit to it.
Well, we didn't. But so like the transition was an awkward one of like, okay, now one of us is like the manager. Per se, everybody's doing different things. So I relate it to when I've seen like an individual contributor go to a manager role, because we were still only a dozen or so people. And then as the scale came, I mean, we went through failure, pivot, survival mode, all that, right? Yeah. But as scale of a repeatable thing came, then it was like, who am I surrounded with of folks like you that can help me figure out my methods?
I do think that's probably becoming CEO in the vast majority of situations is probably a surprise. It's very rare that you're sat down 2 years in advance and like, we're grooming you to take over a business that's going to continue the way it was before, only a little bit bigger. It's like something goes wrong, something breaks, or it's like Hunger Games where like 5 executives are like a fight to the death for the job. It's so rarely...
Yeah.
Well, I went through exactly what you just said.
Yeah, he actually did the transition
with Kelsey, who you mentored. Yeah. So I don't know.
But every time I get a call from a recruiter, I'm like, "You're not calling me. Everything's going right in the business. So tell me what's happening."
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
CEO. But it is interesting that you had a founder who stepped back nicely, because we don't always see that. Sometimes you see the founder isn't as involved and proactive about the transition that you saw there. Did you have to?
That I really want to call out. You're so right. You came to me a year before it happened and you're like, I have this idea. I've got this person. What do I do? So you not only were one of the most thoughtful people and went out and talked about it well in advance before she knew I knew. Your replacement CEO, but then you did it exactly to plan. Like, when does that ever happen?
Credit to her, Kelsey.
When does that happen? Like, and then you did it, and then everything that was supposed to happen happened. I'm like,
well, I remember I was
telling help make that happen.
Well, I told Mike the story about when I was sharing, when we were sharing about what was going on. And you looked at me, you went, "He did it. He actually did it." I was like, "Yeah, you did it." Yeah. So, but those kind of transition, that was probably the smoothest transition I've ever been involved in by a mile. Did you have to make other changes when you stepped in?
Yeah, I started doing things like putting leadership in place, and I made a lot of mistakes because I took the best in any function. And I was like, now you're in charge of the function. And I didn't fully understand the difference between management and leadership. You can be an amazing leader as an individual contributor, but managers, those who set goals, hold people accountable, think about how to like professionally develop rather than just lead with awesomeness. And let me show you how awesome my work is so you can aspire up to it. Very, very different things. So I think my second surprise was that I felt very unqualified to lead, and yet people still were willing to follow. Like there's some expectation when you get the title, people are like, "So now what, chief?" Yeah. And you're like, let's start to let's wrangle some chaos. Let's start to put a plan together.
Well, a little bit for you though. You're so authentic. You're not. I mean, some leaders you run into and you're like, oh, that's an act. You're not, and I think
No.
that's part of what helps people want to follow you. Is just you're yourself.
Well, and I think one of the things people don't realize, which is how much CEOs care about their people.
Yep.
Or they're sociopaths. And they may not act like they care about their people. They may not show it. They may have to make really grueling calls. But I guarantee CEOs think about the individuals, their happiness, their well-being, their growth, whether they're getting a good value proposition more than any employee has ever thought about their CEO's happiness. Like it's like your work children in a certain way, and you get maternalistic, and you care weirdly as a CEO. And I think that's because I'm always like, but let's go.
Yeah.
I am change obsessed. I am like, let's try it. It breaks, so what?
Yeah.
There's nothing that can't be improved at Jellyvision, so don't be precious about it. But I also understand that with scale, and when you have 1,600 customers, some of the largest employers in the nation, you can't just be messy. So I've hired a lot of people who are great at process, perfection, protection. And so now I'm trying to wrangle of how do I get us going while deeply valuing the polar opposite skills I put in place that are great for stability and scale. How do you continue to change? How do you have enough chaos to have the peanut butter fall on the chocolate, but not enough chaos to disappoint a customer?
Right. And did you have to figure out you needed people the opposite as you, or did you know that when you got the role going, I'm going to need some of these people?
No, I asked for feedback, and the thing was, you go too quickly, you change your mind. I'm like, I got new information.
Right. You want a little more stability. People want a little more stability.
They would like a different pace than I would like. And frankly, when you're not just trying to find 0 to 1, but it's 9 to 10, you really got to value the priorities and principles of 9 and not just reinvent from 10. So it's a balancing act.
Well, and I know last company I took over had exactly the issue where we had a founder who had lots of ideas and changing, and it was a whiplash feeling organization. Yeah. So
I may have been referred to as whiplashy.
Oh, okay.
Really? Internally or by the board or what?
My people, I have a chief of staff who worked for me for 15 years, and she's like, okay, whirling dervish. You think people understand what you're talking about and you're moving on? No one is on board yet. So she's like, you can go because you're now bored of it. Okay, here's what she meant.
Here's what's going on.
Step 1 is what? Step 2 is what? Really breaks it down. But I very quickly, I try to be self-aware, and I try to be humble, which means nobody's perfect. So how can I create foils that get energy from things I don't? So I really think of businessing as a team sport.
And is that, so everybody needs a balance on wherever they are on that spectrum? Is it your chief of staff that is your counterbalance to you, whiplashy or whatever people have said, or is it somebody else on the exec team, or what?
I have over-indexed in phases of Jellyvision to have too many sort of collaborate, communicate types. And that is the death of innovation. I think we're getting to a place of having really good balance, because I just appointed a president of Jellyvision, and he's like let's let it rip. He's like let's let it rip. And I'm like, let's. But then we have Bryn, who's still here, who has deep domain knowledge, deep understanding of the people she's working with.
And what is Bryn's role?
Chief of staff.
Okay.
And she's step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4.
Yes.
Okay, madness. Here's our method. And she's utterly listened.
It's really managing it down the funnel to execution on the bottom end. Right. That was the one thing that I put in place. The last company was, you're all going to understand what the change is. And it was one of the co-founders stayed and was getting really frustrated. He said, "Why should we do it?" I said, "Yeah, but we got to bring them along. People have to just come along with you. You can't just say we're going to do that tomorrow, because then they're not going to listen the next day, because they know it's going to change the day after that, right? You got to bring them all with you." As you think about what you do now, where do you spend your time?
So kind of, if you think about a typical day, the first thing I do is I read for about an hour a day. Just on my phone, I read newsletters, articles, I go to LinkedIn. I am just consuming the thoughts, opinions, and data of the world around me to try to get better in industry, better as a leader, know what's going on in the world. I spend a lot of time meeting with people, and I've recently gotten very involved in our sort of innovation division around Medicare. Our business is largely employer benefits. We're getting into Medicare benefits, and I run that team like a startup.
Okay.
Where I am directly involved in looking at creative and directly involved, and it's very, very close.
So run it like a startup with your level of involvement or the autonomy you give the team?
No, I'm part of the team.
Okay.
So I have 2 heads. I lead a leader of leaders for our core established business. I talked to that leader.
This
a
is
man
the
named
new
Brian,
president?
That new president.
Okay.
I talk to him multiple times a day.
Okay.
We have one calendared meeting, but it's just like, do you have a minute? And I do.
Yeah.
What you got? What do you want to talk
Yeah.
through? We'll spitball stuff. And I recently had a really fun moment that was very self-aware. I said, I want to riff with you. And I said, here's an idea. And he said, what about? I'm like, no. I had an idea for you. He said, but we're riffing. And I'm like, okay, that's how it's going to be. Okay.
I thought it was a really good idea. I put a lot of thought into that.
But
one.
I work through Brian, and he is then empowered to make decisions, run the team, have the team, et cetera. Once goals are set, there's a lot of freedom there where I am much more involved in how do we do? What do we do?
Yep.
When do we do it on Medicare? And I'm doing a lot of the work. It's like in a startup, you do 5 jobs. Like I'm getting licensed as a broker so that I can deeply get stuff, deeply understand the details. Like I think one of the skills I have may not be, financially operating at scale and learning how best to optimize for EBITDA, but I know how to create experiences. I know that like our magic isn't in what we do, but the way we do it.
Yep.
And I know what that means. And it's like the way we treat people, the way we
Right.
treat customers, the way we design our product. Like there's a zhuzh factor that has created a lot of wealth for us as a business, a lot of success. And so I like to come in and it's like, even if I can't create the zhuzh, I can be like, it's not there yet.
Yeah.
And this is what I mean. So I'm very, very
that
involved.
point earlier
small
of
team.
authenticity, I mean, that's so core to your personal brand of somebody who's observed and admired from afar, and it precedes the reputation of the whole company. And so back to the becoming CEO way back in the day, did you ever feel any pressure to like act differently once you were CEO?
No, because it was really such a blur. But I'll say something.
okay.
Logan LaHive, who's a serial founder, I did a lunch and learn for his people, and he asked me the question of like, what about being a CEO? And I said, you know what? I have always been the CEO of whatever I'm working on. And that I probably disproportionately care, disproportionately sweat the details. Like when I left Leo Burnett, my first of 2 jobs, Jellyvision's been my second job, I was like, are you guys going to be okay? I mean, I was forgotten. The second that the door started closing, I was gone from memory, but like I cared so much. I'm like, it's got to be like, it's just so, and you've got this stuff coming up and like, don't drop the ball and the client this. And it's like, there was an intensity of ownership that like, my parents are workers and they put it in me and stuff. So that's like, now it's just ownership of not a project, but a company. But that like caring, sweating the details, like believing in potential that is greater than what is and wanting it to manifest into something great is day one. It almost got me fired actually right out of my job because I was insufferable as a 21-year-old. I'm like, I don't think we should do this. This isn't worth my time.
And they went, sorry, who are you?
Yeah, my boss
Do you have
like,
an ID badge?
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry that you thought I was asking you for your opinion. You don't know anything. And then those very same skills of being ornery, of driving, of challenging are welcomed from executives. It's unfortunate. It can make you, that's why a lot of people maybe start early. Because bosses don't want to deal with what can be problematic friction that's also conducive.
How does that manifest itself with a board then? Right? Or time spent. Like if you think about your time, you spend a lot with your board, a little with your board?
I spend very little time with my board. I am also deadly transparent with the board. I think about the board as a team. And I say, I don't work for you. You work for me.
Interesting.
This not true. They could fire me
at
their pleasure. Okay, I just want to be
But as we've
clear.
learned, they don't really want to.
They don't.
No board really wants to fire the CEO.
They want us to be successful. They want us to be convicted. And so I have, it's a board of 4 people. I am 1/4 of the board.
Okay.
We've kept it very, very small.
Yeah, that is.
I have interviewed intensely. I did 11 back channel references in our last investor to board, and I back channeled him because I am predictable. I try, and my promise is no surprises. And that's what I wanted from him. I don't like this like bait and switch, different agenda. Like I will never surprise you. You never surprise me. And I remember I sat down with him at one point and I said, if there comes a day where you need to shoot me in the face. I give you my word. I will act as a shareholder first. My ego will take a backseat until we're long done.
You said this just after a meeting? Or
I said, as I was talking to him about like expectations, and no one does that with board directors. No. What are your expectations? How do you like to get information? Here's how I like to give it. And it had come up because I write prose.
Okay.
I write emails and long form prose, and I used to write a lot of written updates. That was when I owned the deck. And as I got more executives and they brought their own thing, like we kind of
And
lost
for those
it.
that are owning the deck means who's responsible for the end creation of the
That's
board
right.
deck.
Like who owns the materials? And I remember him saying, I really hate prose except for yours. And I was like, funny that you hate prose, and I never bothered to ask you. Whereas I talk to every team member I work with. How do you learn? What motivates?
Right.
Do you like a long leash, a short leash? You want me to be hovering? Do you want me to be far away? Like you talk to your team about how they do their best work. It never even occurred to me to be like, oh, Carter likes
this
a bullet
communication
point
style
that says, here's what you're looking at. And then you look at it. And it's like,
Yeah.
he's a very predictable guy. And it just never occurred to me to treat my board like a team until he said that and said, so let me tell you how I want to be treated.
Yeah.
I don't want executive sessions where I leave the room and you tell each other the truth. The single most important vessel of your honest opinion is me.
Mm-hmm.
And if there comes a day when I need to leave, don't do that thing where you log in and you're like locked out of email. Like,
right.
I like, this is my like life's work. Trust me to put shareholder value ahead of my ego. I will do the right thing, but don't just like swipe me.
Right.
Like, don't, let's not do that. And he said, okay. He did not say, I'd never shoot you. He said, I'll shoot you in the face.
Yeah.
So,
Which, I mean, I'm going to guess it's a struggle for him to act differently, and I don't know him at all, but because that's not how you act on most boards. You have those private sessions and all that good stuff.
But the board I have is beautifully consistent.
Nice. They
do not change. They're not tigers changing their stripes. And I think if I did anything well, I picked consistent.
Yeah.
So
and what is the dynamic, if we can ask? Is it like there's a lead investor and then independents, or like who are these other three people?
There's a founder, Harry's on the board, a long-standing investor, and a newer growth equity investor.
Okay.
And there's not a dynamic of like, I truly think I'm here as accountability for the team.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I am here as a check-in and reflection. I've done various things. Like I used to end board meetings with by next board meeting, we will.
Yep.
And you're like, 3 weeks, you're starting to think about the next board, and you're like, get like quick.
What's my to-do list?
It gets stuff done. But I say it's not valuable to me if you start to pick at our numbers in the Chicago market and are wondering why this broker did whatever. It's like, are we marching towards value? Are we marching towards building a great business? Are we following playbooks and pattern recognition that you have seen? That's what I want. And what they want is for us to have an opinion.
Yep.
I think one of the most dangerous things you can do as a CEO is get down to two options and then say, what do you think? When you acquiesce power, boards go, oh, no, you're not the CEO anymore.
Right.
And I just have a group where I'm like, I think this. And I've gotten a very long leash because I am very transparent about our woes. I'm very transparent about what I think has to be better.
Are you also outlining for them what B is, though? You're saying, I think A, but are you
I've looked at B.
I've looked at B.
C.
Because I said, not this for these reasons.
Okay.
Or I'll say, just riffing, we've talked about this, but like we thought about these things, or we have to get better at this. It's not the main plan, but like we're really looking at the delta, for example, between gross and net revenue. Don't have the perfect plan yet, but hold us accountable to that. That's an important dynamic of the business. And they're just, okay.
Yep. Got it.
I pulled up my notes next time and
that's what, we agreed.
Just simple, basic stuff. And also I would say really good people.
Yeah.
My board, they are good people. They are partnerly, they are ethical, they're supportive, they lead with kindness and benefit of the doubt. And that's just like, that's a huge part of Jellyvision, but we even have it in our board that they would never say there are corners worth cutting. They would never say that.
Yeah.
And that is very motivating. It makes me want to fight really hard for them.
Well, we keep these tighter, so we're out of time. I have a feeling we could have gone on a whole lot longer. Amanda, thank you so much. And thank you all for listening.
Thanks.